Okay, so we just talked about um, posting, taking our information from the journal and putting it into our general ledger accounts. And each account has its own ledger sheet, and we're keeping track of all the transactions that took place in each account. So I can see that there's two transactions here in accounts receivable, Danielle Brastad. And then I can also look over here at her balance. Now, just a reminder, this is one thing you're going to have to kind of know. You may be thinking, well, how do I know if I should be adding or subtracting over here? Well, again, we need to know assets, debits, increase in asset. So right here, when I see that that's a debit, I know that that means that I'm increasing that account. All right. So anyway, remember the first thing in these first two columns, basically you're just transferring the information that was in the journal. This is the actual transaction that happened on the 9th, and we got it from page 1 of our journal. Okay, and then over here is the balance. And like I said, this is showing an increase in accounts receivable. And so my balance is going to be 163 plus 0, so it's 163. Then a little later in the month, we actually received a payment. They paid us some money that they owed us. So when I see this credit, I know that that's going to decrease accounts receivable because accounts receivable is an asset and you decrease assets with a credit. All right. So this is the transaction. On the 16th, we received cash. And so now we have to decrease our accounts receivable account because they don't owe us $163. They didn't pay it all off, so they still owe us some money. All right, and so it's still going to be a debit balance. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm taking 163, I'm subtracting out 120, and it's going to be a debit balance again because they still owe us money. And I know that accounts receivable should always have a debit balance. Okay. All right. So this is posting from the general debit and credit columns. That's what we just did in my last video, and I just wanted to just review that real quick. So we're going to do all of the general debit and credit columns. This is what it's going to look like when you're done with the post reference. And then you're going to come down here and you'll notice I brought over the 1 because we're on page 1. It'll always tell you what page of the journal you're on. Right now we're just starting our company, so we're going to be on page 1. So I put the date, I put page 1, I put the transaction, and I put the balance. And so you'll notice I did that for all of the transactions that used the general debit and credit columns. All right, but we're not done because we have a 5-column journal. We've taken care of these numbers, but we still have these numbers over here, our sales credit and our cash debit and credit. All right, so here's what we're going to do is we'll start with sales credit. If we know we have 2 here, but we could have 22 sales, all right? But we know both of those are sales credits. So in order, and so what we did is we added them up and we came up with a total. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to wait, and we will be posting our sales credit and our cash debits and credits at the end of the month. All right, you're going to always just post these at the end of the month. Or if you start a new, we'll just always post these at the end of the month. These you should be posting periodically. Your debit and credit columns, you're going to want to post those depending on how many tracks or how many transactions you have in a day. You may want to post at the end of every day. You may wait and do it once a week. It just depends on the size of your business and that kind of thing. All right. And to be honest, if you're in accounting now, they have online accounting software, and actually when you journalize a transaction, a lot of times it'll automatically post. Posting, we're going to do it by hand so that you understand how it works, is probably one of the most tedious things. But if you are thinking of going into business and going into accounting, there is software and you don't have to post, so that's always a bonus. But it's important to understand what's happening, all right? So you should be posting these individual amounts on a regular basis, all right? And that, again, is determined by the size of your business and how many transactions you have and that kind of stuff, all right? So we're done with all of our transactions. We're done, it's at the end of the month. So now we're going to go ahead and we are going to post our totals. So for our special amount columns, we only post at the end of the month, and it's pretty simple. We only have 3 numbers that we're going to post. We do not have to go and do these individually because we're just wasting time, and I don't need to post a whole bunch of individual sales when I know that this is what they all add up to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to sales, and the date is going to be the end of the month, all right? So it's going to be March 31st, and my page, I'm still on page 1, all right? And then I know it's a credit because sales credit, and the amount is $838. So I'm going to come there to 838. So now, just like we've been doing, we don't have a balance in sales. So it's going to be 838 plus 0. Well, I know that sales have a credit balance. So it's going to be $838, okay? And sales should always have a credit balance, or they shouldn't have a balance. And that's kind of the same with accounts payable and accounts receivable. Accounts receivable is either going to be a debit balance or no balance. Accounts payables are liabilities. They should always have a credit balance or a 0 balance, all right? So those are just some things that you need to be thinking about and keeping in mind. All right, so I just did sales, and here's the account number 410, all right? So I'm going to come up here. Well, I really can't put 410 right there because does 410 go to this number? Does it go to this number, this number, this number, this number? No? All right, so actually, I think they want you to, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, have you put a check mark there. I guess they're not worrying about that right now. So anyway, I'm going to come over here, and since we're dealing with this column, we're actually going to put our account number underneath there in parentheses. Whoops. In parentheses, we are going to put that we're going to add up well, in accounting, parentheses mean negative, and I'm not sure how to clear that formatting, to be honest. So just for us, I guess what we'll do is I'll get rid of this minus. Don't worry about the parentheses right now. Maybe I'll try to figure out how to format that. So anyway, normally you would put a parentheses around that because you really don't want this as being just a random number down here. But this is the account number, all right? And that's what we're going to do that there. So I apologize for that. And then so basically we're going to do this. There's the account number. So I'm going to do the same thing for cash. Again, I don't need to list these 3 transactions in cash and waste time doing that when I know those are all debits, and so I can just add them up. So again, cash is going to be done at the end, so it's going to be March 31st. I'm going to skip the item column, and it's still page 1, and I know that this is a debit, so it's going to be 5775, and it's going to be $5,775 plus 0, so I know that we've received $5,775 in cash, all right? And then it's 110, so I'm going to come back over here, and I should put parentheses, but I'm just going to skip that for right now, and I'm going to put 110, all right? And those aren't dollars, they're an actual number. And then I've got the credit. So I'm going to come underneath here, and again, I can just go like that, and I'm going to do page 1, and I'm going to go to the credit column, and I'm going to put 2085. That's the amount of my credit. So what I'm going to do is I have $5,775 as a debit because that's how much we've received. So that's a debit balance. And then I'm going to subtract out the amount of cash that we paid out. All right. So I'm going to subtract, but it's still going to be a debit balance because I still actually have money. So I'm telling you right now, cash should always have a debit balance. Basically, all assets should have debit balances, or like I said, or a zero balance here. If everybody's paid up, that could technically be then a zero balance. So that's how it looks. So don't get caught up that this was the same number and then that was the same number. The only reason they're the same number is because we're just initially starting it. This one is a credit. I subtract, but it's still a debit. Do not put it over here as credit, okay? So then I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to do a 110, and that is what we're going to do when you post, okay? Oh, and the other thing is we've got to put check marks underneath here. And again, just as with accounting, the reason that we do that is because we always have to show and make sure numbers are counting for. I've already said that. So we put the check marks under here to show that there's nothing to be done with these two totals because these two totals consist of all different account amounts. So we did all of that over here, okay, individually. But over here, we just did the totals, okay? All right, so that's how you post individual amounts. Was last video. This video, just a quick review, and then how we post from our total or special amount columns. We post the totals, all right?